for this model.
All right. Dave Acunto is out tonight with a family vacation, and John is homesick, but I think he is online. Can you hear us okay, John?
Yes, I can, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so for the new council members, what you have in front of you is a little button, a little red dot. If you want to speak, just go ahead and push it. It lights up a light in front of me. Have a little grace for me, so because I have to pay attention to all the things, but I'll just call on you that way, make it really easy. Are there any questions about the update agenda? Are there any questions about the formal agenda? I have a couple that I just want to make sure I have the right people to call on. Who will do the land acknowledgement tonight? Okay. And then we have presentation 7A, recognizing Joyce. I would actually like to do it if you guys are okay with that.
Yes.
And then we have a public hearing for CDBG. We will have this. And then when we have the TDA meeting after the formal meeting, we will also have this. So it'd be great if whoever does it can do both. Volunteer? The hearing for CDBG funds, the budget.
Oh, sure, I'll do that.
And then you'll do it for the TDA meeting as well?
Yeah.
I think that is it. So also new council members, we wear lots of hats. So sometimes we have multiple meetings. Tonight is one of those nights. So we will adjourn the first meeting. Do not get up and leave because we will convene the second meeting right after it. All right, we will move on to briefings. The first one is appointing members to the Thornton Assistance Fund.
Can I share? I just have.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
A couple of very quick updates. First, I do, and as he's coming up, I'll go through others. I did ask the chief just to give some updates on information we've been getting from Excel. I know that you've been getting some updates in the public, so it's, and he's here. So I'm gonna give it to Chief Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Really briefly, as you've all been kind of watching the news, we have been monitoring a weather event that's approaching tomorrow. We started watching it this weekend through emergency management. And Excel has been planning some public safety power shutdowns with a fairly wide footprint. They do this when we have weather conditions. You'll see a fire weather watch, which we were in for the last 2 days, and we're now in red flag conditions. What that means is low relative humidities, dry conditions, which we've been experiencing lately, and high winds. The current forecast is 30 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds with gusts up to 80 miles per hour. And so these are certainly conditions that are reminiscent of the Marshall Fire, and we're concerned about large fire growth, not just here in Thornton, but around the Front Range and the metro area as well. The original footprint showed a broad area, about 500,000 customers that were in that potential public safety shutdown. The latest reports today have pushed that shutdown area west to the foothills in Boulder and Jefferson County. And so from a city standpoint, our probability that we're going to be impacted is extremely low. So we're not concerned about widespread power outages. We still anticipate windy conditions. We still anticipate the potential of small outages where we have trees against power lines. And XL will be responding to mitigate those. We're all also going to be standing with an augmented response during those conditions tomorrow. So that I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate all of that work. I know it was not a joke, but a fire drill today to get ready for that. So
Busy day. Thank you.
Thank you.
So then I have 3 very quick, more administrative details. We are for returning council members. We are in the process of contracting with Everstrive, who facilitated your council retreat last year for your retreat January 30th and 31st. We are working on a location in Estes Park for that. The reason I'm bringing this up now is, as was the case in Everstrive's contract last year, they reached out to each of you for interviews and feedback going in the retreat to help build their facilitated exercises and the agenda. So it is possible before we come back on January 6th that you may be contacted by a representative of Everstrive just to get the feedback. They don't attribute any of that comment, they don't create a report or anything of those interviews. It just helps them in designing their meeting design for the retreat. So, and then January 6th, I think as you saw the title page there, we are absent some photos of our new members. And so as a slight change from the past, we have actually contracted with a professional photographer. And on January 6th, they will be here to take a group photo. We'll send this all out in an email, but this is to be looking for the information. So we'll take a group photo on January 6th at 5:30 before the meeting. So that will be the most important thing. There'll be some instructions. They'll be here early to allow everybody to get new headshots so that we'll have kind of a consistent look and feel for the headshots for everybody on the council. So they'll be here ahead of 5:30, and then they'll stay a little bit for as the meeting starts. So if not everybody is able to come early, we'll have a laptop going with a meeting that people could step out briefly and get a headshot and come back into the meeting on January 6th. Last thing, we are closed next Thursday and Friday for the Christmas holiday. So I hope everybody enjoys that, and also on New Year's Day. So those are the administrative office impacts for the city. So thank you.
Tammy, anything from you?
No, nothing tonight, thanks.
All right, let's move on to the first briefing for the Thornton Assistance Fund.
Good evening, Council. My name is Maricela Blanco, and I'm the coordinator at Community Connections, who administers the Thornton Assistance Funds program. Each year, the City of Thornton provides grant funds to assist nonprofit organizations that help Thornton residents meet their basic needs and enhance their ability to be self-sufficient. The purpose of tonight's presentation is for Council to provide direction on which candidates they would like to formally appoint to the Thornton Assistance Committee and affirm the Council priorities that the committee will consider when developing their funding recommendation. Both items will be a part of the resolution coming before Council on January 13th. Our agenda for tonight is to briefly review the history of TAF, review the staff recommended selection process, discuss the candidates, Council to affirm the priorities for 2026, and finally, we'll close with next steps. The Thornton Assistance Funds program was established in 1983 and is supported by the city's general funds. This year, we have $314,264 to distribute to eligible organizations. The funds awarded to service or charitable organizations that help residents meet their basic needs. Basic needs are seen as food, housing, health and medical, and human services. The committee will review the applications. They will interview the qualifying organizations and prepare a funding recommendation that they will present to you in May. On the screen, we have the TAF charge, which was created to make sure city assistance funds are used where they matter most. The charge guides funding toward essential needs. Again, food, housing, health and medical, and human services, programs that help residents become more self-sufficient. The charge provides clear and consistent direction to the committee so they can make fair, high-impact decisions for the Thornton community. The TAF committee is made up of Thornton residents that represent the city's 4 wards. Each year, Council appoints members to serve 2-year terms or the remainder of a term if filling a vacancy. The committee members interview the organizations, evaluate the impact they make on Thornton residents. In your Council communications, staff have outlined the recommended process for identifying the committee members for formal appointments on January 13th. According to the TAF bylaws, the committee may consist of 5 to 7 members with representation from all 4 wards. We have 2 returning members that will carry their current 2-year terms into 2026. Both members have financial and human services experience. The TAF bylaws require that the committee may be made up of at least 1 member with financial experience and 1 member with human services experience. Staff recommend council appoint an additional 5 members to serve alongside the returning 2. This will allow as many qualified residents to participate as possible. Historically, council members select a candidate from their respective wards. As such, staff is recommending the following. For the Ward 1 vacancy, a candidate would be recommended by Ward 1 council members. For the Ward 4 vacancy, a candidate would be recommended by Ward 4 council members. And for the additional 3 vacancies, candidates would be recommended by the entire council. We received 9 applications for the 2026 season. The chart on the screen shows a summary of each candidate. The first column showing the name of the candidate, followed by the ward. The third column notes any prior TAP service, and the last column indicates whether the candidate has experience with financial or human services work. Most applicants are qualified to hold a position as a TAP committee member. If council approves staff's recommended process, we can begin that now. So, council members Martinez and Salazar, there were 3 candidates from Ward 1 who applied. Would you like to select a candidate to represent Ward 1?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll say first that the 2 candidates that stand out to me are Darlene Olguin and Francesca Mays. Darlene and Francesca, if you had a chance to read their application, are both very experienced with education and human services. Francesca has served on the TAF committee before and has also served as an advocate for people with disabilities at the Capitol. And I think that she's done an excellent job. Darlene is an educator, and she currently works for an Adams-Swell school in the city of Thornton. And she works at the Future Forward School, where she works with students who are going the non-traditional route to get their degree. And so she's often dealing with working with students and helping them graduate who come from backgrounds that have exceptional challenges to their education and to their childhood. So they're both very familiar with the TAF process and how TAF could help out not just people in their own sphere, but the whole community. So my recommendation for the Ward 1 slot would be Darlene Olguin. And I would also ask my colleagues to consider Francesca as one of the other 3 people due to her experience and advocacy at the Capitol. And she is a person of color and also somebody who has experienced disability in her life. So she comes from a lot of different perspectives. But because Darlene has not had a chance to serve on TAF yet, but also has the experience, I think, requisite for this role, I'd love to give Darlene the opportunity. So that's why I recommend Ward 1 for that Ward 1. Those are my thoughts. Cherish.
No, I second everything that Justin said.
Thank you.
I'd actually suggest Francesca as well. I think we only have 2 people on here so far that are returning, and Francesca would be the 3rd, and that leaves the rest of them as new. So I would agree that Francesca would be a good for one of the 3 vacant positions we have that are any ward. But we'll put that on the table for now. You can move to Ward 4.
All right. Council members Russell and Morris, there were 2 candidates from Ward 4 who applied. Would you like to select a candidate to represent your ward?
Yeah, similar to the Ward 1 candidates, they both have extensive backgrounds in these fields. Jeanette being formerly of Adams County Human Services, and obviously having all that exposure there at the county level, bringing it down to the city, I think she would be a great fit. She would be my first selection. And then Leah is also with the education background, serving in, I think, private and public school districts, but she has grant writing experience as well. So being familiar with everything that we're going to be doing. So I think both of them are great candidates. I tend to lean towards Jeanette just because of the Adams County background, but I'm open for your.
I'd agree. I think both are impressive, and I really appreciate our applications. I like Lee's background, and I like the things that she's bringing to the TAF. But I'm also open. I do appreciate the Adams County Human Services experience with Jeanette, so I'm okay with either.
You guys have to pick one.
Let's do Jeanette, and then we can lobby for Leah as well, because we will have some extra seats to fill.
Perfect. Yeah, Jeanette.
Thank you. And now that we have the recommended candidates for Ward 1 and 4, and because we can have up to 7 committee members on the serving on the TAF committee, would the council like to appoint an additional 3 members?
So if we look at both Francesca and Lee, is there any heartburn from anyone with those 2? And then we still have 1 left. Roberta?
I'd like to advocate for another member for Ward 2, Michelle Lopez.
Particular reason?
Just the information that she provided was good, and I think that like her having financial and human services experience is really a good quality, and then being employed for the Department of Human Services in the state and county level, pretty good experiences to have to be on this committee.
Is there anyone else to advocate for? All right, are we okay with those 3? I need to see head nods.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so it looks like we will,
Yes.
Francesca and Lee and Michelle. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Madam Mayor.
For 2025, the TAP committee used community connections data to identify where residents need most help. Based on that data, the committee set 4 funding priorities: housing and homelessness, food, health and medical, and human services. They also prioritized nonprofits that were easiest for Thornton residents to access and those that serve a high percentage of Thornton residents. These priorities helped ensure funds went where they would matter the most. The chart on the screen showcases Community Connections' top referrals. A referral is a response for information. So for example, if someone calls Community Connections requesting rental assistance and we give them information for 5 organizations that can help, that would count as 5 separate referrals. The chart is arranged with the highest number of referrals at the top, beginning with homelessness down to human services referrals. The only difference from last year is the sequence in which housing was first and then homelessness, and this year homelessness is first, followed by housing. For purposes of TAP, housing and homelessness have been grouped together as one, and we're calling it housing. On the left, the chart shows the referral type by category, the volume of year-to-date referrals through the end of October, the 2024 referral totals, followed by the percentage change between the 2 years. And the last column is a summary of the factors that contributed to those changes, which we'll get into the next slide. Staff attribute the reduction in food referrals to 2 things. 1, the self-select farmers market were reduced from weekly to 1 time per month, which accordingly reduced outreach. And 2, our health equity coordinator had been out of the office for 3 months, also reducing outreach. The impacts of the federal legislation, One Big Beautiful Bill Act, cuts to the temporary assistance for needy families contracts, and the expiration of the American Rescue Plan Act funds are being strongly felt in our community. We will now review some high-level shifts impacting ecosystems serving people in need. Homelessness and housing. In Adams County, based on the one-night count for homelessness has increased approximately 282% since 2019. Adams County's affordable housing shortage is worsening, with two-bedroom rent at $2,140, requiring $76,500 yearly income. Some nonprofit partners have reported reduced access to grants. Adams County has reported cuts to TANF funding for at least 4 organizations that offer housing and homelessness prevention, such as rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. Reduced TANF funding forces nonprofits to focus on urgent crises like evictions and shelter, while limiting their ability to focus on prevention and long-term support. Food. Beginning November 1st, a new federal law will change the eligibility requirement for some SNAP recipients, who will now be required to work or volunteer 80 hours per month to be eligible to receive benefits. This specifically applies to able-bodied adults between the ages of 18 and 64. Some exceptions will apply. As a result of food bank outreach, staff have learned that a lot of people are relying on local food banks, while the rising costs for food, transportation, and utilities have been straining their operations. Health and medical. The Colorado Hospital Industry Report indicates that 70% of Colorado hospitals closed 2024 with unsustainable financial margins as expenses exceeded revenues. The Big Beautiful Bill Act reduced funding and access-constrained clinics and hospitals, increased uninsured rates, and heightened uncompensated care burdens. In Adams County, nearly 1 in 3 residents rely on Medicaid, and federal legislation could threaten their access, reducing care for seniors, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups. In human services, staff and nonprofits are reporting that immigration rates have created fear and distrust in the immigrant communities. As a result, families are less likely to seek social health services or educational services. As a result of H.R. 1, the federal legislation and state budget reductions are expected to decrease available funding for human services programs. So some organizations still depend on ARPA funds, which will end in 2026, creating future funding gaps. So with the information that we have shared tonight, and based on the data from Community Connections Top Referrals, staff recommend that council consider the following process for establishing the council priorities. The recommended priorities mimic the referrals by volume, focusing on meeting the most basic of needs of shelter and food, followed by health and medical and human services in order from highest to lowest priority. Within each category, prioritize nonprofit applications that consider accessibility. So nonprofits that offer programs or services that are most accessible to Thornton residents. So for example, in-home services, nonprofit provided transportation or service delivery, location near a bus and light rail would be prioritized over organizations that do not offer this. Percentage of residents served. Nonprofits would be ranked based on the percentage of Thornton residents served of the overall number of people served by the organization. And finally, collaboration with other nonprofits. So priority would be given to organizations that are actively partnering with other organizations to fill those gaps in community services. So when considering the resolution coming before council on January 13th, does council support staff recommendation for prioritizing nonprofit applications, or would you guys like to make changes?
Justin, go ahead.
I support the recommendations. I just had one question, because you mentioned the health coordinator being out for 3 months. Was that due to some of the changes from the Adams County funding, or was that a different reason why we lost that person for a quarter of the year?
Different. I'm Jalen Stotler, Deputy Director for Parks, Recreation, and Community Programs. The Health Equity Coordinator position mentioned is a Community Connections position funded by the City of Thornton General Fund.
Okay.
and she was out for a few months and actually did not return. We have since posted the position and are currently accepting applications for those listening online that might be interested in it.
Alright. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure because we did, just like how we reduced the farmer's market from weekly to monthly because of the Adams County pass-through funding and all
Right.
that stuff. I wasn't sure if that was also related, but thank you for clarifying.
John?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I also concur with Councilmember Martinez. I support this. I do deal with food insecurity a lot in the nonprofits I volunteer with, but still, the number one concern of our neighbors, as I knocked on their doors this year, is homelessness and housing. So I fully support the recommendations. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the recommendations? All right, it will be on the January 13th agenda.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next one's gonna be pretty boring because there's nothing going on. The state legislature.
Peggy says.
Wishful thinking on my part.
Good evening, council. I will introduce for the new council members and for everyone, Peggy O'Keefe, our lobbyist who helps us down at the State House. This is now your third session with us, I think.
Second.
Second
This will be my
session.
second.
This
yeah.
will be your second, okay.
Yeah.
Just feels like longer, I
Yeah.
guess. Welcome, Peggy. We'll hear from Peggy here in a minute. On the agenda tonight, we do want to provide a little bit of background on the program, particularly for the new council members, and as a reminder for the balance of council. And we are looking for some specific council feedback and direction on a few things. So that kind of comes at the end, and I'll highlight the things that we're looking for your feedback on. The agenda tonight, we want to, like I said, provide that background. We did some peer research, which we've shared in your packet. We found interesting, wanted to just share a little bit of that. There's a good report in your packet. I won't go through it in great detail, but want to highlight some of the key takeaways that we found, which was really useful. As I said, Peggy's going to give you a heads up on what we've seen in the interim committees and what we're expecting through the session this year. We do want to review your priorities and make sure that the draft priorities that are in the council for your agenda still reflect what your priorities are for the session. Get any feedback you have on those before you formally adopt them. And then, like I said, get a couple of pieces of feedback on how we approach the program. So a lot of words on this slide. I'll sum it up. Just for purposes of background, every year you all adopt or have for many years a legislative agenda that really identifies the priorities for us at the State House for bills to flag and for positions that you're likely to take. That's in your packet as an attachment, as a draft document. We're looking for a little bit of guidance on that and formal consideration in January. Once we're in session, we will be tracking legislation. Peggy flags bills for us. This CML is also a great partner. Staff has professional associations. They capture bills, and you all in your spheres and contacts are made aware of bills that are important for us to track. So that's how we source bills and how we track them. And if you have ones that are of particular interest, we welcome you all to send those to us so that we can add to the list and take a look at them. And then the third kind of key pillar of the legislative program is advocacy. That we rely heavily on Peggy, but all of you all have taken part in advocacy, whether it's through your personal relationships, directing staff to write letters, going down and testifying on positions on bills. So that's kind of the way this program has worked, at least in recent years. That you all adopt the priorities that provide guidance. We and all work together to track and review bills and then advocate for those things that are important. I did share, we did some peer research on other programs, and I'll say there are many similarities to our program that we found in our peer research. And one of the core ones was that idea of adopted priorities, that it's really important that council identifies what's important and agrees on that. So that provides guidance for whether it's you all or staff or our lobbyists to advocate on. And, to be honest, one of the key differences is just really how much the level of engagement that different boards take in this. Some because of lack of resources really rely on CML. Others like us are a little bit more engaged, and others are even more engaged than us. And so that's kind of one of the key differences that I noted in our research. I will say we did share also in your packet some sample platforms from other cities, so you kind of see what they look like. Found that kind of interesting. So that's the program in a nutshell. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Peggy to talk a little bit about what's been happening lately.
Yeah, you bet. Happy to start off. We're expecting 2 more vacancy committees. They will meet at the end of the year and the beginning of the next year. Senator Winter's vacancy committee will be meeting on December 23rd. Representative Lindstedt is one of the candidates that's running for that seat. If he wins, then that will create yet a 3rd vacancy committee in his seat. There will also be a vacancy committee in Representative Byrd's seat, who has stepped down to run for Congress full-time. So constantly seeing changes in legislators, but this may hopefully be the end and we can keep a full group in line for the rest of session. Going into next session, the budget will again cast a big shadow over policy discussions in 2026, whether it's healthcare, education, transportation. Every sector is going to be impacted by the budget. We saw a hole of about $1 billion last year. We expect to see a similar hole going into this year. And, you know, as you saw during the special session, the current year's revenue shortfalls required the legislature to go back in, dip into reserves for $350 million, cut a bunch of tax credits. And then there were some policy decisions that were made as well. The Joint Budget Committee has already begun those discussions by having briefings and hearings going into next session. Those departments that they are meeting with are looking at budget cuts. You've probably read about the governor's suggested privatization of Pinnacle, who is the provider of last resort for workers' comp. The spinoff of that would potentially create $400 million. There's concern on that, but they're so desperate for money that I think it is on the table again this year, even though it was rejected last year. They're also looking at how to address Medicaid growth. Medicaid growth in the state has far outpaced the revenue by an 8.8% compared to the Tabor cap growth of 4.4, which has created another shortfall in the state. So their biggest priorities are looking to maximize Medicaid coverage and trying to get the best value, the highest coverage with the dollars that are spent. There's also going to be significant changes and discussions going on with Human Services. HCPF and Department of Human Services have put some big changes on the table that I think are going to be a big part of the conversation this year as they look at trying to find ways to improve some of those errors that are on the books right now that are linked to what sort of money we get from the Fed. So in terms of the 2 big interim committees that met, most of them were cut off because of the budget shortfalls. But the 2 big ones, transportation, they passed a bill that will be introduced next year, allowing for the use of electronic certifications of titles on vehicle transactions and a clean energy, clean fleet enterprise authority. In terms of water, there's an ag property tax bill that broadens the definition of ranch for property tax purposes, and a bill that hones in on ag products grown in Colorado and limiting the use of Colorado Proud. Some of the big areas that we expect to see bills on this session, we spent a lot of time during the summer and fall meeting with not only our delegation, but key legislators throughout the state to try to understand what bills they're going to be working on for next session. We will see the YIGB bill come back this session. As you recall, last year that included churches and schools. This year, it's going to be brought back as the Home Act. It will remove churches and just focus on schools, nonprofits, housing authorities. So we'll see how that bill goes. That was a big issue for CML and a lot of the local governments last year. There will be legislation to look at Proposition 123. Representative Basenecker, I know, is bringing a bill that the details are still to be worked out, but it's going to change the eligibility of Proposition 123. It's going to be lot splitting legislation and legislation on minimum lot sizes. We'll also see legislation on law enforcement, including legislation for a prohibition on law enforcement from wearing masks or concealing identities. We'll see drone legislation limiting how drones can be used by law enforcement. There is going to be a Fourth Amendment warrant bill on searches and seizures. So lots coming in the law enforcement space. We are expecting municipal courts to have another busy year, including another failure to appear bill. So lots coming all over the place this year. And like I said, it's really going to be, I think, driven by these budget discussions. So we'll keep you posted. I'm sure we'll have, by the time I get back here in January, we'll probably have a couple hundred bills introduced. So more to come.
Peggy's been really good about giving us heads up about stuff through the interim as well as leading into the session. Even if there's talk about this. I did want to share, there are two, well, they're not bills yet because they're not in sessions, but there's drafted language. So just as a preview, because there's drafted language I wanted to share with you, they're of interest to us. There's a bill on transit and housing investment zones. So pretty complex, it's pretty thick. But is a potential tool that could be used to help leverage investment in infrastructure, facilitate housing, but seemingly competitive and not really quite sure how it would work. So again, this hasn't been introduced. It's something that we'll be looking at. Wanted to make you aware of it and that it's on our radar. The other one is a bill that would regulate access to historical location info databases, really around public safety. So license plate readers, that type of technology. I think there's the potential for additional legislation later on in this session as well. So we're keeping an eye on that, and we know that you all have a policy discussion scheduled for, I think, in February. So we'll see about timing. It'd be really good to have that policy discussion to help inform positions on bills. But we are keeping an eye on that one and just want to make sure that you're aware that those ones have been introduced. So any questions on those or for the session on Peggy before we get into, like I said, we'd like to get your direction on a few things, but want to stop and see if there's any questions at this point.
Any questions? I just have one comment with the budget concerns with the state. I'm very concerned that they're going to push unfunded mandates onto the cities to get their agenda pushed through. So just because the state doesn't have money doesn't mean we do. And so making sure that a priority is, let's avoid those unfunded mandates if at all possible.
Well, that, Mayor, is a great segue into the state legislative agenda and our proposed policies would start with local control and funding. So we've identified or proposed for you 6 priorities. They're listed there. And there's a 10 or 15 page document in your packet that talks more about these. Local control is tools, not mandates, if I could sum it up into one thing. Transportation is really advocating for improvements to our regional transportation system. Think I-25, think Colorado 7, think, continued investment in the N line. Public safety is about, making sure that we maintain local control of public safety matters in the community and looking for support. Oftentimes we're able to leverage funding support from although maybe not this year, from the state. Water security recognizes the investment that Thornton has made as a large water utility in our system, and making sure that our interests are protected and represented at the state, as well as, you know, this ongoing issue of PFAS and emerging contaminants. Housing really recognizes our interest in partnering to create housing for all, accessible housing, and emphasizes the support that we're looking for, whether it's Prop 123 or other state funding sources. And then sustainability, I mean, is really about, you know, we have an interest in pursuing sustainability efforts. They oftentimes can be costly. It's really helpful if we can get funding. So those funding advocacy may be difficult this year, but the priorities that I shared with you in short are pretty consistent with what we had last year. I did, again, referencing the peer research, we looked at others. The platforms vary from 4 to 20 plus priorities. CML is 40, but that makes sense. They're representing a diverse, you know, stakeholders across the state. So that was kind of showed me we were in the ballpark. Some do more, some do less. We would like you to formally adopt this. We've tentatively scheduled formal consideration on January 13th, but I just want to stop here and see if there's any feedback on the platform. If there's anything that you feel like we need to emphasize as we finalize the document for your formal consideration.
Justin?
Yeah, I heard a lot of preemptive sounding bills when you were talking, and that's the theme these days. So I completely agree that we should keep local control as one of our top priorities because of the concern that Mayor Coleman just mentioned, among others. You know, we need to advocate for partnership over preemption and partnership with CML on that. I didn't hear anything about transportation specifically. I do think it's a good priority, but I do wonder if we don't anticipate a lot of transportation bills coming up, if there's room for another priority. I will say, I think I agree with all of those up there, and I would suggest that we consider adding another priority for bills, advocating for bills for older adults, and partnering with the Area Agency on Aging and Dr. Cog's lobbying team to advocate for whatever scraps that are out there that they're advocating to help keep our older residents in their homes. That's proven to be cost saving, that's proven to be healthier for our community, and they often, these types of bills get deprioritized. So I would suggest that we add that to the list because.
So would that be a subset of housing then, an emphasis on senior housing?
Yeah, well, you know, it's not limited to housing, so maybe not a subset, because some of these bills or some of the funding could spill over to transportation as well, or even public safety. So
maybe it's not an extra item, but it is an emphasis or
I
a
don't
focus
see.
area.
I would advocate that we put older adults on there as an extra one. I don't see how it would hurt us to not add another priority, and it also has a broad impact on a large percentage of our residents. And my perspective is, you know, being on the Dr. Cog board, we hear this all the time. It's a tragedy what's happening right now, and I also don't anticipate moving the needle on this, but I feel like anything we can do to help at least call attention to it might, in the long run, get us some success in the future. So that's my proposal.
John?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Martinez on this as well. As a member of the active adult community, and I partake in the active adult center's many activities along with my wife, we definitely need to protect and support our active adult population to the greatest extent possible. So, you know, I'm amenable to an emphasis, but I also would like to see that add to our legislative agenda if it's appropriate. Thank you.
Any objection? I need to see heads nod. Just, okay, thank you. So I think we can add that as a focus area in our agenda.
Will do. So you'll see language reflected in the, and thank you for the housing, transportation, public safety. That's great feedback, and we can craft some language around that. Anything else on this one before I move on? Okay, so the last piece of direction we're looking for really talks about your engagement and advocacy and updates. So three things. We have historically, and we've done this in a variety of ways, hosted some sort of a legislative meeting. We've done it as a dinner at a hotel. Last year, we did it kind of appetizers at the community center. We can do it. I think there've been talk about maybe just having, if our legislators make it, having just a briefing here. We're really we're looking for your feedback on how you, if you want to do that and how you want to do that. I'll say Peggy reached out to our delegation to kind of get some feedback. And I think the one thing that was uniformly important is that they want to hear from you. And so if we're going to have one of these meetings, it's really important that you guys are prepared to talk to they want to engage with you and hear your thoughts on it. So we'll take your pleasure of how you want to structure or organize that type of engagement this year.
Chris?
Just feedback from the previous two that I've been able to attend. I preferred last year's event. I thought it was much more personal. We kind of just got in a circle around some tables and we were able to get that dialogue flowing a lot easier than the previous year when we were isolated at dinner tables and different conversations were being had, but you're missing out basically because you're losing some of that classroom environment. So whether it's here or community center, that would be my preferred format for that meeting.
Any objection to that format? I think the more personal, the better.
So try to build off something similar to what we did last year.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, we'll get you pulled on some dates and try to find something that works for our legislators as well as for your all schedules. So thanks for that feedback. Second is the council updates. So what we're proposing is that we schedule basically formal briefings twice per month. And which I think we had generally been doing one per month in previous sessions, but I know council has expressed some interest in hearing a little bit more when possible. So what we're proposing is we try to slot those in twice per month. There may be, I think Peggy's going to make every effort to get up here for those meetings. There may be some times where she has to zoom it in because of what's going on, but down at the Capitol. And then as we did last year, we would include in every agenda just a placeholder. We don't necessarily have anything to bring up, but it's an opportunity for you all, recognize on your planning session or update agenda to, hey, this bill came up, are we tracking that? Can we get that on our radar? I will say, if there's, for those informal updates, if there's a substantive discussion that you all want to have, like giving us a heads up so that we can be prepared we'll be prepared at the formal briefings to talk about bills. At the informal ones, if there's a particular bill that you have an interest in hearing about, just giving a heads up is really helpful so that we can get useful information in front of you. But how does that sound? Does that feel like the right amount, too much, too little? Your feedback on that approach?
Any objection?
No.
Good.
I really liked what we did last year. I thought it was very helpful. It gave us the opportunity to talk about the things that we were hearing in addition to what you were hearing at the Capitol. And then your email updates are fantastic.
Oh, good.
Justin?
Yeah, I do want to say, I love your clear strategies newsletter or email.
Oh,
It's
good.
very helpful. I also want to ask Peggy if it would be okay if I emailed you or called you just to get some advice from you, a professional lobbyist, on how to track these bills myself, because it's hard. I mean, so I would just love some help on, resources or what to do to better follow this fire hose of information.
Yeah.
Because I just want to be better at tracking it so I can have better conversations with my colleagues.
You bet. Happy to do that. And we also, once session starts, there's a link to the bill tracking system that we use. I am hoping that tracking system has made some improvements as well. So I'm hoping it will be a better tool for you all. I mean, as Rob highlighted up here, we looked at 178 bills that we sent to staff to review. So those are all listed on there, which is not a helpful number for you. So we'll work on trying to come up with something that's a little bit more user friendly as well. Hoping to do that.
All right, thank you. I'll
Yeah.
reach out to you.
Yeah, happy to.
That is another great segue into the last point I want to make, and I'll make it quick. We will every Friday, as you know, send out a bill summary of what we're tracking. We do try to prioritize them, so you don't have to look at all 178. We do high, medium, low, our best guess. So this one, we're not necessarily looking for specific direction tonight, but something to think about. You see the stats of what we tracked and how much you took positions on 16 bills, which is kind of in the ballpark of what other communities are doing. Testified, we think, on 2. We also sent letters. That advocacy has been historically focused on bills that have an impact to the city based on your identified priorities. They have some financial impact or some direct impact to operations. And so that's kind of going to be our going in position. But we welcome feedback from you all throughout the session. If there's I think we really need to focus on, we're missing this or that, just from your perspective of how we are identifying bills and advocating would be helpful. So any other feedback on that, we're happy to take. I know you've got other things on the agenda tonight.
Any other items? Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Peggy.
And always feel free to reach out with questions or thoughts, suggestions. Thank you. Happy holidays.
All right, so we have an update on the environmental sustainability master plan and first, I do see we have an executive session. We may have to come back after the formal meeting to give us time to have that discussion.
Yeah, I apologize that we were not able to reschedule items for tonight. We had a couple of time sensitive things given the rescheduled meeting, and we had a consultant availability issue with moving this. So appreciate our consultant being here. This will be quick. This is just a status update. So I'll give it to Emily.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Emily Hunt. I'm the Deputy Utilities Director here. And I'm here with Andrea Green with Blue Strike Environmental, who's the consultant that's helping us out on the Environmental Sustainability Master Plan. So tonight, we've been visiting with Council about every quarter this year to let you know the progress on the Environmental Sustainability Master Plan. We'll go over the status. Andrea will talk a bit about the greenhouse gas inventory, the community engagement, and the feedback we've been getting from the community. We'll give you a sneak peek at the draft goals and strategies. It's a lot, so we'll blow through it, and no, you won't have a chance to look at everything here on the screen, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are. So just some background. Last year, City Council established the Environmental Sustainability Task Force, which is a community task force, and they directed staff with the support of the task force to develop an environmental sustainability master plan. So that's what we've been working on this past year. Our goal with this master plan is for it to be essentially a roadmap to achieve climate mitigation, resilience, and sustainability for all of our residents. Even though the city doesn't have a sustainability master plan, a lot of our departments and divisions have been undergoing sustainability efforts for a decade, for a long time now. We've also got sustainability objectives in the comp plan. So the idea of this master plan was to somewhat align all of these different plans, as well as move the needle on certain sustainability issues and to tackle some that we've never really addressed as a city. We really want this to align with all of our existing plans. We did have a sustainability action agenda, which was kind of an informal sustainability roadmap, and obviously the strategic planning effort that the city just underwent last year. So a lot of alignment is what's happening here, but we also hope to kind of dive in and move the needle a little bit on the sustainability initiatives. So this is just a high overview of the different phases of the project. You can see the first part of this year, we really was a deep dive into all of those existing plans I was referring to. Blue Strike worked on the greenhouse gas inventory. We met with the task force. We've been meeting with them every other month throughout the year, and they've been guiding the process along the way. We did a bunch of community outreach trying to understand basically where the Thornton community was at on sustainability and what their priorities were. With that information, we spent the summer kind of in strategy development, drafting goals and strategies, again, continue with community input and task force guidance. And where we are now is Andrea is busy drafting the sustainability plan. We're finalizing the strategies and goals, and we've been having a lot of meetings with Thornton staff to make sure that we get their input on goals where they're the subject matter experts. And then we'll hope to finalize the plan first quarter of next year and bring it back to City Council for your approval. So that's kind of the timeline that we're on right now. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to talk about the greenhouse gas.
Thank you, Emily. Pleasure to be here with you all tonight. So this is going to be just a high-level overview of the municipal and community greenhouse gas inventories. So we did a 2024 baseline as part of this ESMP process. The emissions for Thornton's community-wide inventory totaled at 1.28 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So this was calculated using standard methodology that is approved by the EPA, and we use data from the city and Xcel Energy and United Power. So we did calculate emissions per capita to kind of show a little bit better how Thornton is comparing to its neighbors. So you'll see with those numbers at the bottom there that Thornton's pretty much right in the middle with some of these peer cities. One thing to just note with these numbers is that Thornton's baseline is newer than these peer cities that we've benchmarked against with that 2024 baseline. So we then disaggregated the municipal emissions data and pulled those out from the community-wide data. The reason we did this is because these emissions will be the easiest for the city to control, and you have the most power over those. So we wanted to develop strategies that are going to target those emissions head on, and you'll see that reflected in the draft plan when we approach that phase. So municipal emissions totaled at 24,325 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. Thank you. So as Emily mentioned, we've been doing a lot of community outreach as part of this project. Emily mentioned the task force. We've been meeting with them every other month and keeping them updated on the status of the project. Emily's been doing quarterly updates with City Council, and then we've done a variety of outreach efforts to engage with staff in the community. So we did 4 staff focus groups. We did a community survey online and had 277 responses. We did 3 pop-up tables at city events, 1 community meeting in person, and then a virtual open house via a web page on the city's website. So with these efforts, we had some key findings. So with the survey, there was a high concern about climate change in general, with 43% of those participants saying they were very concerned, and 40% of them asking for an urgent action on the city side. So there were specific calls for education, school programs, green jobs, partnerships with nonprofits, HOAs, and businesses. Some top priorities were renewable energy, energy efficiency, public transit, active transportation with biking and walking, water conservation, waste reduction, and tree planting. Some of the major barriers that were identified in these engagements were just high cost of implementation, a general lack of information, limited control over certain emission sources, and infrastructure gaps. Overall, there was a general focus on equity in a lot of our engagements. So there was interest in investing in underserved neighborhoods and ensuring access to programs and funding for those efforts. So the Environmental Sustainability Master Plan will be organized into these 4 topics. So they are buildings and energy systems, sustainable transportation, land use and resiliency, materials, waste and water management, and natural systems and environmental protection. So we have some sort of high-level simplified draft goals and strategies that we're going to walk through with each of these categories. The first of which being the buildings and energy systems. So this category focuses on improving energy efficiency and electrification, updating building codes, adopting renewable energy, and reducing GHG emissions associated with buildings. So you'll see that there are goals. Each goal has a series of strategies associated with it. And then what's not shown on the screen is each strategy has a series of action items associated with it. So those are going to be very specific to-do items for staff to check off. So we're still working on those. Right now, we're just looking at the goals and strategies, but I'll give an example for each of these categories here. So for this building the energy system category, the first goal is to improve energy efficiency and advance electrification. The third strategy there is to optimize city facilities and operations. And an action associated with that is to continue efforts to replace equipment like HVAC system, pumps, and lighting with high efficiency electric alternatives once those equipment reach their end of life. The second topic here is sustainable transportation, land use, and infrastructure resiliency. So this category focuses on promoting alternative transportation methods to reduce vehicle miles traveled, increase EV adoption, and reduce GHG emissions from land use and infrastructure. So you'll see the second goal is to increase adoption of EVs community-wide. A strategy associated with that is to expand EV charging infrastructure. And then an action that we're recommending is to install EV chargers at city facilities and public spaces. The third category is natural systems, community, and environmental protections. So this category focuses on expanding access to parks and green space, strengthening community health and education about sustainability, and protecting Thornton's environmental quality. So the first goal here is to expand access to parks and open space to improve community resilience and reduce urban heat island effect. One of the strategies is to transition to water-wise landscapes. And an action with that strategy is to develop and distribute multilingual water-wise landscape guides. And then our last category is materials waste and water management. So this category focuses on reducing potable water usage by improving efficiencies and promoting education, increasing waste diversion through recycling and composting, and ensuring the longevity of these programs. So the second goal is to increase community waste diversion. A strategy for that goal is to expand curbside and event-based recycling and composting. And then an action that we're recommending is expand electronic waste recycle, mattress recycling, and household hazard waste events. So I'm going to pass it back to Emily to wrap this up here.
So obviously a lot of actions and strategies. And for those of you that are familiar with city operations, you can already see alignments with things like the water efficiency plan and the transportation and mobility master plan, and the strategic plan that was just adopted. So what we're doing next is we're finalizing these goals, we're finalizing these actions, again, kind of with the input of city staff and vetting all of that through the task force to make sure that their recommendations are coming forward. There will be a prioritization of strategies. So, we're probably going to end up with over 40 action items at least. How do we prioritize those? How do we inform staff and even city council as you're considering a budget, which ones we think are high priority or ones we want to tackle? So there will be a matrix that gets developed that kind of goes through all of these actions and puts them into a bit of a priority and costs included with all of that. There'll be an implementation plan that then gets generated out of that. We will develop this, or Blue Strike will help us develop this roadmap for implementation, which departments will be the lead on certain things, what years we might want to start, what key performance indicators we want to include, and what cost estimates. And again, all of that will go into helping it inform the priorities. We won't be able to do everything, and we certainly won't be able to do everything on the first year. We are shooting to have council adopt the plan in the first quarter of next year, so there'll be time to review those final actions and strategies, and then it'll come forward with formal adoption and with a recommendation from the task force, hopefully first quarter of next year. And again, one of the things that we're really wanting to do is align this with the strategic plan that's being put forward. We've got citywide staff teams that are implementing parts of the strategic plan, and the sustainability master plan actually has its own action item in the strategic plan. And so that team will be incorporated into this kind of finalization so that all of these things hopefully are in alignment, and we can move forward and start to tackle some of these actions. So no, that's a lot of information, a lot of detail, but we'll be sharing information with you, and feel free to dive into any of those goals and strategies. And if you have questions or suggestions or think we're missing something, we'd love to hear from you, especially in these next couple of months as we start to really finalize this. So that was the conclusion of our presentation. Happy to answer any questions or take any suggestions that you might have.
Justin?
Yeah, just phenomenal job. I'm so thrilled that this is coming about, you know, this whole thing started in response to residents' concerns about the overflow sewage spills in the Niver Creek. And so when I made the motion to create this, this is way bigger. It's grown to something way bigger and more robust than I ever imagined. Thanks to all your hard work and to all the board members on the committee. So my question, or I guess it's more of a request for staff, is that when we get to the budget for the 2027 budget process, that we are given, you know, it's very clear to see the connections between the items that are being requested at the high level to the work of the plan, because that's how I see kind of how the actual actions are at the spending level manifest. So it'd be just good to see that connection. But I don't have any questions. I just thought you did a great job.
Anybody else? Thank you, and very impressive work, and I love the tie on the strategies. I think that helps inform the budget as well, so thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
All right, I am not gonna call the special meeting now. We'll do that after the formal meeting, so when we finish the TDA meeting, then we'll come back in here for the executive session. So from now, we get a few minute break before we head out to chambers. You want anything else?
Bring
Yep.
up a couple of things that are kind of urgent.
Sure.
It won't take very long. The first one is that there is a group of residents in South Thornton that are organizing a town hall around the flock ALPR camera systems, and they are very excited. They're organizing. It's all resident led, and it's really cool to see them kind of come together and do this. It's going to be in mid-January, and they want the council to be invited as listeners, or to be able to hear the discussion that unfolds among the residents and their guests. They're inviting the ACLU, they're inviting some technology experts, and they want us to be able to listen. It's not necessarily intended to be a forum for us to debate as a council or to even share our opinions, but it seems like a great opportunity to really hear firsthand how, you know, at least one group is viewing this issue, and it is very relevant because a few weeks later we're getting the city's presentation. So my request is that we notice this so that it is posted, and that the whole council, if they choose to, can go, and that we're not violating any meetings laws. So that would
Keep
be
it posted just like we do any other third party event.
yeah, that would be my
And put on our
request.
calendar too,
Yeah.
so that we know when and where it is.
Yeah, and I can.
And if it works for the schedules, it works. If not,
Yeah.
it doesn't. So
Yeah, absolutely, not required at all, but I just want us to be able to have that option. Okay, and then the other thing is urgent and quick, but Delaney Coe from Almost Home, who's the deputy director, reached out to me, and she is doing, the Almost Home leadership are doing presentations to the council, councils of various cities in Adams County, to look at ways to expand the partnership through alternative funding, and they want to come to one of our planning sessions. So I would ask if we could agree on that and get the staff to coordinate with Delaney and to find a time for them to come present to us.
Yeah, and this is something that Councilmember Salazar has also expressed interest in.
Okay, yeah, Delaney just emailed me last week, so I guess the sense of urgency is off. So
any objection? I guess figuring out where to fit it on the schedule is the only challenge.
We'll look, your January 6th meeting does have quite a number of items, but it is a planning session.
okay, thank you.
Roberta?
Yeah, just really quickly, I just wanted to see if it would be okay with council that Danielle Adams, a community member, connect with Tashko to do a presentation for Black History Month in February.
Any objection?
So I can get the number to you,
Yeah, that
and
would be
then
great.
you can get them with Tashko to
For sure.
them out. Okay.
Chris?
I'm working on some issues with the pathways school, and it's becoming more of an issue between Global Village, Westgate, and Pathways because they're all choice schools. And there's a lot of requests with the committee I'm on to try to inform them or update them on where we are with the RTD Washington corridor connection. So I'm asking of council, because I know we all sit on various committees and we get pieces of information everywhere. If you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to connect with me, give me some of those updates, and then from the staff level, whatever I could be brought up to speed on, so that way I can report back to them. And if there's anything that we can start doing to help push that forward, that'd be greatly appreciated. The other piece of that urgency is through the Colorado 7 coalition, the Boulder to Brighton route will start summer of 26. And so that goes east and west, and getting riders north to Highway 7 is also a big piece. So I think it serves dually in the sense of taking care of the students, but then also connecting that. So I'm just trying to gather as much information so that we can start making some progress or steps or lobby, whatever we need to do, see that come to fruition.
Happy to get an interim update. I did have a meeting, I think 2 weeks ago with Kent Mormon, and we have talked about creating maybe a quarterly transportation update to make sure that everybody is aware of some of our key transportation priorities and so the status is, but we'll make sure we get some of those near-term support to you as well.
And I know Justin serves on NADA, so maybe you've got an update on anything that you can get for Chris as well,
Absolutely.
since Jessica's not here.
I know,
anymore.
she's like the.
She is the go-to person.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're gonna sit with
Those are-
committees coming up in the
We'll
future.
try, I think that's on the 6th.
I'm supposed to fill, but I'll do my best. Yeah, you got a NADA meeting on Thursday, so.
Awesome.
Anybody else? All right, you got 3 minutes.